Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review The School for Good and Evil. And this is a new fantasy action drama that clocks in at a hefty 2.5 hours, based off of a book by Soman Chanani and adapted by David McGee and directed by Paul Feig. And, you know, he did Freaks and Geeks and Heavyweights and Spy and Bridesmaids and all these other kinds of things. And this is a story of two young women in like one of those kind of fantastical worlds. You have Sophie, played by Sophia Ann Caruso, and Agatha, played by Sophia Wiley. All these Sophias all over the place here. And this story focuses on these two young women who, one of them wishes away from their lives so that they could go to this magical school where they train the good and the evil of fairy tales, and they feel like they wound up in the wrong place, and along the way they try to figure things out, turning into a whole entire big bloated kind of story about the history of the school and their journey, and trying to find good and evil, storytelling, and all kinds of stuff that, my God, there was so much going on here. Now, I do have to say, so many of the main characters here are young women, and it kind of felt weird because I felt like you could tell it wasn't written by a woman. And there's a lot of things that are just like serviceable and stereotypical that you expect out of like teenage girl interactions. And I'm just like I feel like somebody watched a bunch of like teenage movies about teenagers and were like, well, that's how teenagers act and that's how they act here. I do really like Sophia Wiley. She has a bit of an edge, but she's the one that actually cares about everybody, and literally like nobody else cares about anybody in this film. And it's hard to build those connections with a lot of these characters because there's not a whole lot of empathetic characters, and I know on some level that's supposed to be the point in this story, but it's hard for you to really care. But I did care about Agatha. Sophie I didn't really like from the beginning, and I think that's what they're trying to allude to, because like she thinks that she's not supposed to be in the evil school, but maybe she is. And you have Cate Blanchett, who narrates the story, and there's like a meta element of that too, which I found pretty interesting. But you have Lawrence Fishburne and Charlize Theron and Kerry Washington and Michelle Yeoh, Peter Serafinowicz, and you have all these like veteran actors in these supporting roles as like the teachers and the headmasters and stuff like that, and I think they work. I enjoy them in the roles that they have. Some of them are definitely having more fun than others, but I feel like a lot of them are having a lot of fun. This does get bogged down by a lot of, you know, stereotypical like young people trying to find true love. And even though it does try to break down a lot of those stereotypes about what good and evil is in fairy tales, it still leans into a lot of those kinds of things narratively, and is a bit of a slog. But this film is at 2.5 hours and just feels so drawn out. And by the end, you have this antagonist at the heart of this film. I feel like not very interesting, and the performer, like that performance of this character isn't very interesting, and you're just kind of like blah. I'm like, I don't really care about this, and this became like such a big crux to the whole entire story, and they do so much exposition dumping in this. There's probably like a good half-hour screen time just dedicated to exposition dumping in this film, trying to set up this whole world, and the world and what it's doing is an interesting idea. I like the concept of this. And in the end, I did wind up enjoying it. There's some exciting action and fun along the way, but this is over-bloated, overdone, over-long, and it did take a lot of the enjoyment out of me, and it was hard for me to keep interested and engaged for the last hour of this film, where I really feel like they could have like trimmed this down to a more manageable story. But that's not to say I didn't enjoy it. I did like it, and it's a soft like, and a soft recommend. It is a big investment of 2.5 hours that I really don't think it needed, but it is a fun fantasy world with a lot of fun, interesting meta commentary on fairy tales and fantasy worlds, and generally a fun cast along the way. So I think it's worth a try. It's not something that I loved, and I don't know if I'd sit through it again, especially not at 2.5 hours, like I've said multiple times, but it does have its merits. But those are my thoughts on The School for Good and Evil. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.